of the Village of Riverside Planning and Zoning Commission. Would you like to call the roll, Ashley?
I will. Commissioner Hennigan.
Here.
Commissioner Marhol.
Here.
Commissioner Matthews.
Here.
Commissioner Miller.
Here.
Commissioner Pelletier.
Here.
And then we have absences from Chairperson Mateo, and Commissioner May's term, I think, is ended.
And given Chairperson Mateo's absence, if we could have a motion and a second to have Commissioner Pelletier act as chairperson.
So moved.
Second.
The call again?
Yep.
Okay. Commissioner Hennigan.
Yes.
Commissioner Mahol.
Yes.
Commissioner Matthews.
Yes.
Commissioner Miller.
Yes.
And Commissioner Pelletier.
Yes.
Thank you.
Felt like I should have recused myself on that one.
Oh.
Okay. So the next agenda item is the approval of the meeting minutes from our last meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion on that? Does anyone have any edits to the meeting minutes?
No.
Nothing?
Thank you.
Okay.
I'll call the roll then. Okay. Commissioner Hennigan.
Yes.
Commissioner Marhol.
Yes.
Commissioner Matthews.
Yes.
Commissioner Miller.
Aye.
Commissioner Pelletier.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't see any members of the public here. I do want to note that Attorney Mars is in attendance as well. The next item, do we have a staff update from the Board of Trustees?
It's not an update from the Board of Trustees, but I will let the commission know that we will have a new village planner joining us next week, and hopefully they'll be present at our upcoming meeting at the next scheduled Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. So we'll welcome them and hopefully get them ready for you to sit with me for a little while until they take over. Wonderful.
Very exciting. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next agenda item is a public hearing. Do we have a motion to open the public hearing?
So move.
Second.
Okay. We'll call the roll. Commissioner Hennigan.
Yes.
Commissioner Marhol.
Yes.
Commissioner Matthews.
Yes.
Commissioner Miller.
Yes.
Commissioner Pelletier.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, this is a request from the village board, from the Village of Riverside, to consider proposed text amendments which include but may not be limited to Section 10-7-3, accessory structures and uses, to provide clarification on plumbing and maximum size requirements for accessory structures and such other amendments as are deemed necessary. The public notice was published in the Riverside Brookfield Landmark on July 2nd and will be entered into the record. Anyone who wants to provide testimony needs to be sworn in, but seeing none. Do I look for a motion to approve the amendment? Do we have discussion?
Do you want to kind of go through it? Do you want me to go through it?
Yeah, you were the
sorry.
primary drafter of text at the moment, and
Sure.
I contributed some, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay, so this is a subject that you guys have chatted about on several occasions. It's been back to the board a couple times, and most recently, I think it was in February, that we had a discussion here at PZC on certain aspects of what the board had asked you, certain questions that the board had asked you to consider concerning the size of accessory structures, plumbing fixtures, and living space above garages. And you you provided your thoughts on those questions, which were then forwarded to the board. The board discussed them at the May 20th meeting of the board. As Commissioner Marhol and I were talking about, the discussion was pretty limited. Trustee Pollock, who's the liaison to the planning and zoning, said he, wholeheartedly agreed with your recommendations, with the exception of the plumbing, and cited his reasoning for thinking that, that's really a code enforcement issue, and he would favor full plumbing being allowed in accessory structures. President Ballerine said that he agreed with Trustee Pollock, and there was no other discussion, and then it was, the consensus was to move this forward to a public hearing at this level. So while it wasn't entirely clear, what the rest of the board thought about the plumbing, we had two people speaking in favor of the full plumbing. So that's how I drafted it, because it's easier to kind of back down than to blow up. When we're talking about, it's easier to say, here's our draft, and we're talking about full plumbing, and if you guys disagree, then we will bring it back down to just select fixtures or whatever you guys decide. But the draft does include full bathrooms and related plumbing being allowed in accessory structures. So anyways, taking the discussion that you guys had, as well as the board direction, we put together this draft code amendment, which is in your packet. There was some discussion about pool houses. Pool houses weren't traditionally called out, or weren't previously called out as an accessory structure in the code section on accessory structures and uses. So I added it there. And we also talked about home offices, which was kind of the genesis of this whole discussion back when Trustee Giza first brought it up about during the pandemic, and the idea of more people living and working at home, and possibly having office space and making room for that office space in accessory structures. So I added a specific reference to home office there at the beginning of the code, where we have introductory language about what kind of accessory structures we're talking about. Further down, the PZC had made a recommendation to allow to keep the maximum size of accessory structures at 800 square feet, but to not have that to be a maximum on the lot. So the governor now is just going to be that maximum of 12% of the lot area, with individual accessory structures not exceeding 800 square feet per structure. As I mentioned, we also, it wasn't explicit in your code about the plumbing fixtures, so it specifies here in the draft, full bathrooms and related plumbing are allowed in accessory structures, including attached and detached garages. We had a comment, which the commissioner will read in a minute, from Chairperson Mateo, talking about whether a attached garage is even an accessory structure. I think that is an excellent point. When we look at the definitions in the zoning code for accessory structures, it uses the word detached. So I would recommend that we delete the reference to attached garages there. And then the next change was just exempting, which we had already done, the landmark coach houses from, this was to clarify that that other than landmark coach houses, which are allowed to be used as dwelling units and always have been, that no other detached garage or other accessory structure shall be used or occupied as a dwelling unit. That was just so we have something very direct and plain language to hang our hat on, to point to say you cannot have a dwelling unit in an accessory structure. And then the last change is in the home occupation use standards of the zoning code, where we talk about, there was a question about how to interpret the home occupation maximum of 25% of the total floor area, whether that was on the whole lot or how it should be interpreted. So the way that it is worded in the proposed draft is the home occupation shall not exceed 25% of the total floor area of the principal building, or in the event the home occupation is also located in whole or in part in an accessory building, the combined total floor area of the principal building and accessory building. And so that is the extent of the changes. And, you know, I brought up the fact that Chairperson Mateo had asked you to read her comments into the record, so this might be a good time to do that.
Okay. From Commissioner Mateo, Chairperson Mateo. Commissioners, I am unable to attend the meeting this week. I've asked Assistant Village Manager Monroe to share my opinion regarding plumbing with you, and Commissioner Pelletier to read it. Regarding 10-7-3A-6F, full bathrooms and related plumbing are allowed in accessory structures, including attached and detached garages. Only one trustee advocated for allowing full bathrooms, saying that he is not concerned about garages being used as dwelling units. No other trustee opined. And I would be in favor of allowing a toilet and sink in accessory structures, but no shower unless the structure is a pool house. As a point of clarity, is an attached garage considered an accessory structure? From proposed text above, quote, including attached and detached garages. So that's what,
Right, so we've already addressed that latter comment with my recommendation that we delete the word attached. All right.
so,
Assistant Manager Monroe, do you have anything to add?
I do not. There have not been public comments received, further discussion by individual trustees with staff about the issue. So it's really a discussion for you all at this point to discuss, I guess, point by point, if there's any recommended changes or alterations or a request to remove the proposed changes. That's how I would recommend, I guess, walking through the proposed text.
okay.
Great.
Do we have any questions before we start?
Right, so I guess I would ask, if I might, if you guys feel like you have enough information to, you know, have a discussion and make a recommendation tonight, then we can go ahead and close the public hearing at this point. You guys can proceed to your deliberations.
Yeah, I do.
Okay, so,
Do we have a motion then to close the public hearing?
Motion.
Second.
Commissioner Hennigan,
Yes.
Commissioner Marhol,
Yes.
Commissioner Matthews,
yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Pelletier.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so for discussion purposes, do we want to just walk through each of the proposed text amendments, or do we want to have some discussion? Does anyone have any opinions they want to
I think
get up?
I have a lot of opinions, but I think it might be easiest to walk through them in the order that they're proposed in the text amendments to kind of keep things organized.
Okay,
And I would
Sounds fine.
support Commissioner Hennigan's thoughts on that.
Thank you.
okay, so we'll go through all of the proposed amendments and then talk about whether we think they should be approved or not, yeah? I am using the memo, so in 10-7-3, adding the pool house and home office. So accessory structures should include but not be limited to the pool house and home office. Anyone have any?
That addition seems to be the least of what we would be worried about.
Agreed.
I would agree with that, but if we're going to allow home office and specifically call it out, I think we need to define home office elsewhere in the zoning ordinance to prevent people from doing things that don't meet the home occupation standards and arguing that it's a different type of use.
Okay. Another option would be as, the text says to include but not be limited to. One does not need to, we don't necessarily need to add these uses. It's not necessarily adding to the text unless we want to be exhaustive in our listing of uses. So that's another consideration.
I could support that as well. When initially reading this, I did actually kind of trip over the words home office. Something about it, and I think this goes to what Commissioner Hennigan is referring to, that people can get awfully creative. Pool house I would like to keep, simply because this is then going to get into what Chair Mateo mentioned with regards to the potential for showers. And I think that's going to be helpful as we move through this. But I think you're entirely correct in the use of the words "but not limited to" certainly gives a lot more freedom to create an accessory structure to one's content.
Is there a need to define pool house in that, or is that defined in the ordinance somewhere?
It is not. But I don't think,
Okay,
playhouse is not.
right. Okay.
Private greenhouse is not.
Okay.
So is there a consensus to remove home office then?
I would support that.
To remove home office?
From the list?
Just from the list.
From the list.
Doesn't,
Doesn't
you
mean
can't
you
do it.
can't do it.
It's just not,
It just doesn't need to be specifically called out.
It's not a structure that's a home office.
I mean, I disagree with removing it because the genesis of this entire effort to amend the ordinance was really because of home offices. So it seems, I think it's important to have that in there. I mean, and I'm not too concerned about people overstepping bounds, because if you go to, section 10-7-3, 6G, it specifically, calls out that you can't use this as a dwelling unit, absent it being a landmarked coach house. So I'd argue for leaving it in.
okay.
Yeah, I can go either way. It doesn't matter that much to me. We can include pool house and home office. Speak up. That would be fine with me. I think it's a little odd to say that you have a structure that's a home office, but that's fine.
Office space? Is it better?
Yeah, maybe, or, yeah, I mean,
Workspace?
Workspace.
workspace could be good, maybe.
Because
but
that,
again,
I like workspace because that includes more than, that gets you your
workshop.
Right.
your workshop,
Things like
thank
that.
you.
Right.
Rolls it into a more encompassing concept.
John, is that,
No, I still think home office should stay. I would add workspace, but if I'm outvoted, I'm outvoted, so I don't want to belabor the point too much. But
Okay.
I think there's a fundamental difference between a home office and a workspace. I mean, I would argue that a workspace is someone who is, at a certain level, perhaps a serious woodworking hobbyist or someone like that who utilize the space for that type of work, whereas home office is more, paper pushing, computer, stuff like that. I mean, at a certain level, it's semantics, but I come back to that home office was why we started doing this, so that's where I'm at.
And maybe it's reasonable that we add workshop to this list of additional 2 terms, also say workshop, because I felt that was kind of a glaring omission when I'm reading this, and you're talking about an animal house or a playhouse. A workshop is probably something more likely someone's going to.
Be an accessory structure.
Yes, right, I'm thinking.
You know what, I've come around on the idea of having the home office in here, and I really don't like it being included in this section because I don't want freestanding detached office buildings on residential lots. And that's really what we're talking about here, by not saying office within a detached garage, we're saying accessory structures, including a detached garage, a greenhouse, or an office. And I really don't want to open the door to that. Because we're talking about, we've been talking about, my understanding is using space within an attached garage, not building a separate structure.
Right. And this is sort of is opening up the issue a little bit more, but 2 things. I think I don't know why you wouldn't have an attached or detached garage here, just as Chairperson Mateo suggested later on. And I'm not sure about the things that are listed here. I mean, why is a deck not considered an accessory structure, but a gazebo is? And we don't define gazebo, but that's opening up even, larger set of issues.
I think,
Yeah, I mean, a deck could also be a covered deck. We don't say it's not a covered deck. People have covered decks next to their pools on the back of their house. I don't know if that's considered an accessory structure or not.
so correct me if I'm wrong, Attorney Martins, an accessory structure is by definition detached.
Correct. In your zoning code, it's defined as a detached subordinate structure that is located on the same lot or parcel as the principal building. And use shall be incidental to that of the principal building thereon.
Okay, well, that explains that.
I think if we want to specifically call out home offices as being permitted within accessory structures, the place to do that is in section 10(7)(a)(6), where we have F and G added, to add it there, because we're talking about allowing plumbing within an accessory structure. You could allow an office within an accessory structure. You're talking about what you can do within that building rather than creating a separate type of building. That would be my suggestion.
So, do we have general consensus on that? We would take home office out of the definition of the accessory structure, and we'll consider further on adding it as a use within the detached structure or the accessory structure.
No, and I don't want to do, I don't want to leap ahead too much, but that's going to bring, I think we need, if we're talking about this home office, I think we need to resolve it, because it also impacts 10.626, where the home occupation, and I don't know how that, arguably I think 6 is talking about a home office. The home occupation shall not exceed 25% of the total floor area of the principal building, or in the event the home occupation is also located in whole or in part in an accessory building, the combined total area of the principal building and accessory building. So in that provision, we're basically saying, set up your home office in an accessory building. I mean, I can't read that any other way.
Yes, we are talking
Yeah.
about setting up your home office in an accessory building. We're
Yeah.
not necessarily talking about an accessory building that is exclusively your home office. I think that's the fine line that we're discussing here is a home office. We're not defining an accessory building as a home office. Because that really typically is an interiors, a space part of another. And that really was the genesis of the board remanding it. Should we take a poll? Just,
Well, I was actually that'll probably be necessary as soon as I have a couple sentences, but it's basically the home office use has always been permitted in our zoning code. I mean, the item, 10.6-2, 6, it had and I'm gonna paraphrase, home occupation shall not exceed 25% of principal building and/or accessory building. That was always there. So you were never, ever prevented from using your accessory building in your home occupation. I'm off my soapbox.
And so what is that implying? That we don't need to add it?
In a lot of ways, we don't. But there's other opinions out there.
I'll just add that it's not just that one sentence, it's throughout the home occupations, refers to accessory buildings multiple times. So it is a little confusing to be talking about whether it should or should not be allowed, since it seems like it is already allowed. But I think the plumbing is going to be the issue that we're really getting down to here.
And you summarized it better, Commissioner Hennigan. It is definitely throughout that use standard home occupation.
Okay. Should we just move on to the next?
That may be more helpful
Okay.
because it will get to the real, bigger issue.
So 10.7.3A.6E, the maximum allowable. Do we have any exceptions to this? Any discussion?
I'm not sure why we need to do it, but 800 square feet's awful big.
Yes.
It's a 20 by 40 space. And now we're gonna allow more of them, depending on your lot size. And obviously the area of your principal residence and all the impervious and other lot coverage issues that go with that. I'm not sure how increasing 6E makes things better.
Anyone else? Thoughts?
Is it increasing it? Isn't it just the same?
Well, it actually increases it because it allows 800 square feet per structure, which means that you could, depending on your lot size and impervious and everything else, have 2 800 square foot accessory structures on your property, or as many as you can fit, depending on the rest of the rules.
Was that the
Whereas-
intention of writing it this way?
Yeah,
It was.
that was the consensus or the recommendation of the PZC, was that we're just gonna use the 12% so that people with larger lots aren't limited to 800 total feet on their lot of accessory structures. So at the February meeting, the PZC said they were comfortable with, they didn't want to increase the maximum size per structure because that's a decent sized garage and everyone was happy with 800 square feet, but that if you had a larger lot and you wanted to have more than 800 square feet and you were still under 12%, that would be okay. That was my understanding and what was conveyed to the board.
So if you wanted a garage and a gazebo?
I think, I mean, to me, this clarifies what we already recommended approval of. So in that sense, I'm okay with it.
I could give just a little bit of context in terms of the size of lot that we very commonly see when I'm reviewing various lot sizes. There's quite a few between, the zoning code requires a minimum lot size of, 7,000 square feet or 5,000 square feet or more. There are very few properties that I've been looking at recently that have a square footage that would allow the 12% and also allow two fully 800 square feet structures on the lot. So you're looking at if a property were to choose, to put up more than one accessory structure, you might fit one 800 square foot structure and then a slightly smaller accessory structure as well. So if there's a garage or a greenhouse or whatever the case may be, if you're talking about an average size lot between 6,000 to 8,000 square feet, it would fall somewhere in that range and not necessarily be able to fit two very large structures on the lot.
And that's an average lot or some of our larger lots?
It just depends which zoning classification. There's quite a bit of the R1A lot size is a minimum of, I believe, 7,000 square feet. So the great majority of properties fall potentially well above that minimum, but I'm seeing a lot of lots between 8,000 to 10,000 square feet. And so in that range, you'd be somewhat limited in not being able to fit two 800 square foot structures on that property. And then all the other factors of, the impervious, ground cover and all of that would all also align into our review from a zoning perspective.
Right, I was going to note in the staff report that went to the village board on your recommendations, on this issue, it said the majority of the commission felt the regulation should be revised to be 12% of lot area with a maximum of 800 square feet per structure. This was considered in the context of the overall impervious surface maximum requirements, which provide another safeguard against overly developed lots.
Mm-hmm.
So impervious surface and the 12% are both continue to be regulators as to the amount of accessory structure coverage.
Do you have an idea of how many lots are more than 10,500 square feet in the village?
I'm still learning quite a bit of the topography and zoning in Riverside. I'd have to look at the zoning to be able to
Right.
compare and
Okay.
identify the larger lot sizes. There may be certain areas of the community that would be more prone to having the larger lots that have potential for that. Quite a few of the lots are relatively deep as well, so the depth of, from street frontage to the back of the lot can be, well over 100 to multiple hundreds of feet. And so it just depends on the layout, I suppose.
Any other? John, any thoughts? Or
No,
Commissioner
I'm
Matthews?
I'm fine with the,
Okay.
as it's written.
And I'm also fine with this. I think it's reasonable, and it does, as I recall, it was what we discussed at the time, not so as not to restrict larger lots needlessly. So,
Is there any statement in the zoning code as to how far apart accessory structures must be from each other? I know it says how far they have to be from the principal building, which is, I think,
I don't believe so.
so someone could put up two 800 square foot buildings right next to each other, basically.
I believe,
Which, given the size of lots, maybe it doesn't make a difference, but it's the massing concept in the backyards, I suppose.
I'll see if I see anything while you guys discuss.
Yeah, I'm not familiar enough with that. There's some separation, like you said, between the principal structure, between the side lot lines.
Right.
it may be a building code
Right,
potentially
I would imagine
too.
building codes require some kind of
Separation. yeah.
buildings.
There's fire, mostly it comes down to fire regulations, and like Jacqueline said, I know there is a distinct or a requirement for the principal structure and the
Right.
accessory structure. We did talk about that at one of our other hearings. But I thought it was primarily for fire more than anything else.
So depending on the construction types, the way the structures are built, they can be very close to each other. They can be 3 feet away from each other. They can even be immediately abutting. But I'm trying to think of my mind, if you have two 800-square-foot structures, would 3 feet or 5 feet or 10 feet apart really make a difference?
Well,
It's still going to look massive.
You're right, yes,
know.
you're right, yeah. And it's also, if I'm thinking about this correct, since we're only including detached structures, if someone had a large lot and they can build up to, what is it? Their building space can be up to 3,000 square feet, I believe, roughly, 3,200 square feet. They could just build a giant house with attached garages, and it would be that big. And if they built a small house and they had two large detached structures, it would be equivalent, the same thing. It's just that, yeah. I mean, I'm wondering if there should be some correlation between the size of the principal building and the size of the detached structures. Maybe we're assuming that's just how it's going to work, because if you have a larger lot, you're going to have a larger house, and therefore the detached structures would be small.
I would think that would kind of happen organically, you know?
I think so,
I
yeah.
just don't see, a small ranch home is, it's not gonna have the scope to
Giant
do a
garages.
massive sculpture. Well, some of the huger homes on huger lots will, so,
Not around here, that's
yeah.
probably not true out in farmland, but, yeah. I don't know.
We could consider a requirement to have separation.
I'd rather leave that to the rules that we already have.
Okay. Okay. I feel like we have,
I can stand corrected on
Okay.
6E.
okay. So 10.7.3, A6F, full bathrooms and related plumbing are allowed in accessory structures. What are our thoughts on that?
I agree with Chairperson Mateo that it should not, it should be a sink and a toilet, not a full bathroom if that's going to include a bathtub and/or shower.
I would concur with prohibiting bathtubs and showers, simply because it would create a code enforcement issue. It would be a burden upon staff and a difficult one to prove who's living where and what part and what activities they're doing inside their accessory structure. I'd rather not open that.
I'm in concurrence with all three commissioners, including Chairperson Mateo.
I agree.
Done.
I
Okay.
agree with that.
So, can we work on wording then? What would,
I was going to ask you whether or not we call this a half bath, a powder room, or we explicitly say a sink and a toilet. I don't have a preference.
Or perhaps explicitly exclude
Showers.
showers or bathtubs, because what if someone has 2 sinks or whatever?
there was talk previously about allowing showers in pool houses.
Right.
We can go there, but I think then that becomes a section. We'll call out pool houses separately, so that every accessory structure except for a pool house is only allowed the half bath.
And should a pool house maybe perhaps be defined? Otherwise, it could be sort of a vague reference.
Right.
I mean, a shed is obvious, but I don't know. And then you could define in there that a shower is allowed for a pool house.
And that could be the way to regulate it, is within the definition of a pool house. Well, no, forget I said that. But I do think if we're going to have a separate regulation pertaining to pool houses, we probably should define pool houses. Even though I think it's sort of understood.
Probably
Perhaps
is, but it gets away from, I think, your point, and if I can put words in your mouth, it gets away from the idea of someone saying that the 10 by 10 pond next to their garage is a pool.
Sure.
And therefore, they're allowed a shower and bathtub.
Thank you.
Does that,
That's sort of what I was thinking there, yes.
I think we should specifically call out toilets and sinks. I think that just, it's, when in doubt, let's make it abundantly clear that's what we're talking about, because I'm not even sure I know what a powder room is. I think I do. but-
in my mind, John, a powder room is a toilet and a sink, but
Yeah.
like I said, I can defer to more explicit fixture call-outs.
I like the idea of saying exactly what it is we're allowing.
So if we just changed it to say toilets and sinks and related plumbing are allowed in accessory structures, including detached garages, that covers it?
Yes, I believe so.
Do we need to say including detached garages?
Nope.
No.
I agree with that as well.
Okay.
Okay. And then the next section regarding coach houses and accessory structures are not allowed to be using dwelling units. Any comment on that?
I think that was a good addition.
Yeah, I think that's
Everyone?
fine.
And 10.6.2, to clarify that home office use, which expands into an accessory structure, may not exceed 25% of the total floor area of the accessory structure and primary structure combined.
I strongly prefer the ordinance as it currently stands,
Okay.
limiting it to 25% of
Primary.
the principal or accessory building, not allowing you to take your 2,000 square foot house and then have 500 square feet of office. That seems excessive to me.
So if I recall, the issue was that it wasn't super clear in the code how it should be interpreted. Commissioner App stated she had interpreted it a certain way, but the idea was that we would be explicit. So under your proposed interpretation, would we say combined principal and accessory building?
I
Or
would-
no, because that would, so if somebody wanted to have office space in an accessory building or home occupation in an accessory building as opposed to the principal building, how would you measure that?
I would say the home occupation could be 25% of the floor area of the primary structure if the home occupation is within the primary structure, or 25% of the accessory structure if it's within the accessory structure. So 25% of whatever structure it happens to be in.
So it's going to be a tiny home office, and if it's located in the accessory structure,
I think so.
If it's an 800 square foot accessory structure, then they've got
200 square feet.
200 square feet,
Pretty
which is
tiny
a,
office.
But most aren't.
that's,
Yeah.
Yeah, if it's a
800.
500 square foot house, accessory, let's say 600, what is that? That's 120 square feet. That's a very small office. And is the bathroom facility is not included in this calculation? Is that clear? It's not part of the home office, the bathroom facility?
I think it would be.
I wouldn't think so. I don't think, do we include bathrooms and floor area?
When we're measuring the floor area, it's livable space, so it's just within that calculation. If I'm looking at an aerial, I'm looking just at that box outline of whatever that floor area is, and then if we were to have a plan that would designate a portion of that accessory structure as a, whatever they choose to use it for, we would identify that as that separate use.
So another question I have is the way it reads, or maybe in the change. It made it sound to me like you could have a home occupation, which is the term that's used, in your house and in your accessory structure. I mean, you could use both spaces as your home occupation. Is that something, let's say you have a home office, like an actual office where you do your legal work or whatever, but then you have, I don't know, a storage space or annex, I don't know what, in the accessory, I mean, is that allowed or is that not allowed?
That hadn't occurred to me, but I think I'm okay with it.
With having it in both places?
Yeah.
And then limited to 25% in both, 25% of each building?
Right, simply because, again, it gets to be an enforcement issue of, if someone has an office in their garage, then we need to get inside their house to see if they have an office inside their house. And I don't know. I don't know that I want to do that.
I'm almost, it never occurred to me until now, leaning towards deleting all of 6. I mean, is this necessary? Because the rest of the use standards basically say, look, you can't run a metal shop, you can't run a warehouse facility. It's basically, we're talking, for lack of a better term, white collar work done in a white collar environment. And then you get the home occupation shall not exceed 25% of the total floor area. Well, I mean, what does that mean, right? Because are you saying then you have to, it's unenforceable. I mean, so you can have, like, this is my home office. Are you saying then well, that's where we want you to work. You can't work in your bedroom or the living room or the kitchen or anywhere else. I mean, we're not saying that. I realize that. It's an absurd, reductio absurdum argument, but I mean, it kind of is like that because you're prescribing the use of the rest of the house, or you're saying that this part of the house has to be used for the work area. Yeah, I mean, I don't like unenforceable laws, because it just seems odd, and I think the rest of this does prescribe, or not prescribe, but it does, fix the problem we're concerned about. I mean, the issue to me is the accessory building, is someone setting up an office that's, in an accessory building, and that's all it is, which we may want to allow. I mean, that's what you want to do with an accessory building, but this one's a little bit troublesome to me. And I'm not sure I articulated it right, but there's something about it.
I don't think your articulation is bad, John. The reality is we are saying that this is a residential, you have to use your residence as a residence, and a bonus is that you can also work at home. Number 2, some of this gets, I don't want to go through this entire home occupation section because we can get into too many debates, not here, but with others. But, receipt, sale, or shipment of deliveries, what happens when you get a refrigerator-sized box, which people do? I mean, I think my point is that I agree with that the 25% restriction really doesn't do all that much for enforcement. And it's really the impacts to the neighborhood in terms of noise and of people visiting, or just the residential character that we're more concerned about.
And there is a limit on the number of employees.
It's basically your family.
Your family living in the premises, so yeah. it's-
Correct. That's the first point of it. No person other than a family member residing in the premises.
Okay, so I'm fine then, I mean, from what Joel's saying, I mean, that makes sense to me, that you do want to have something here that's basically just a shot across the bow saying, look, we don't want you to use your house as an office, so that's fine. Can I just bring one other thing up now? I know other people might have thoughts. I don't quite understand the language here. So it says, the home occupation shall not exceed 25% of the total floor area of the principal building. Or in the event that home occupation is also located in whole or in part in an accessory building, the combined total floor area of the principal building and accessory building. So that to me reads that if you're just working out of your house, it can't occupy more than 25%. But if you got an accessory building, it can be the combined total floor area of the principal building and the accessory building. In other words, 100%. Am I missing something, or am I reading that wrong?
I think my understanding was it's 25% of the combined square footage of the accessory building and the primary.
I think it's the 25% still applying to the combined total floor area. I don't know if that's, didn't seem
Well,
bad track.
and I think, John, if I can paraphrase, it includes, you combine these two structures, the home and the accessory building, say they're 2,000 square feet plus, or say it's 1,500 square feet plus 500 square feet. That's a total of 2,000 square feet. Now I can use 25% of that total floor area for my home occupation, which means I can use 500 square feet as my,
Okay,
that's where this ends up reading.
yeah.
So I think now I'm gonna defer to that side of the room, because I think you guys have other thoughts on how much do we really want to allow that accessory building to be used as a home occupation space.
I've been thinking about what Commissioner Miller said about the 25% on your standard garage, really giving you a small room there. And I think that does make a lot of sense. So I would suggest having, again, keeping the principal and accessory structure calculations separate, but if you have an accessory building, allowing something larger like a third or 50%, that would seem more reasonable to me,
Of the accessory building?
of the accessory building.
So perhaps up to 50% of the floor area of the accessory building. So if you had 800 square foot garage, then it could be up to 400.
Yeah. Or if your standard 24 by 24 garage, you can have 240 square feet.
Seems reasonable.
So we're trying to prevent people from using 100% of their accessory structure as a home office.
I would want to, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
That sounds reasonable. What it does, in my mind, I'm picturing a two-car garage, and then someone takes one bay of the garage and converts it into their home office. Okay. And has a powder room, a toilet and a sink in there as well, plus their car. Okay. That should not create too intensive of a use. and still meets the general idea of residential property. Which I think is the ultimate goal.
Could that have a kind of a backlash effect that if someone wants a 400, square foot office, but they can only, utilize up to 50% of an accessory structure, then they're gonna max out on the accessory structure. And so we're gonna end up with larger accessory structures to get around this. I don't know that it will, because money's money, right? It's gonna cost you a lot more, but will it? I don't know, it won't cost a hell of a lot more for these structures, really, or not. They're just balloon frame probably. It's not gonna.
Yes, I suppose that's a possibility, but I don't think there are that many houses that could accommodate the 800 square foot maximum size garage based on the 12%. So I'm not sure if that's, would be common enough of a problem that we need to regulate against it.
I'm wondering about the floor area. So I think about people's basements, and maybe they're finished or they're half finished. Is that counted in floor area? And then the definition in the code is floor area gross, the sum of the gross areas of the several floors of a building, measured from the exterior faces of the walls. Shall not include parking spaces or exterior balconies. So does it include someone's basement? Does it not include? Does it only include the part that's finished? Do we need to define that somehow?
Seems like that would be defined somewhere already.
That's my definition.
I'm not familiar enough yet.
Right, so I'm sure our plan reviewers have a way that they address that, but neither Ashley or I really.
Right. Well, also,
No.
should it be defined, though, in the code, even if it's like by, a realtor's, what is that called? Typical way of doing things. Shouldn't it be defined in the code if we're saying 25% of floor area, total floor area of the principal building? I don't know.
Repeat, I've now lost my train of thought completely. So we have gross floor area defined in the code, and you're saying that
When it says,
in this new 10.6-2, it just says total floor
well,
area.
even in the old one, it said 25% of the total floor area of the principal building. So I just am wondering.
So is it implied that total floor area in 10.6-2 really means total gross floor area?
No, it's just what does total floor area mean? I mean,
In
it
my,
could include a
in,
basement.
in my
Basement,
mind, it
right?
would be it would be the gross floor area as defined over.
So does that include a basement? Maybe we don't
Usually it doesn't, but this gets to marketing and everything else.
Well, sometimes, should it be defined in the code as opposed to just what a realtor would argue,
Right, but I think it's probably defined in our adopted,
the building
Building
code or
codes.
something? Okay.
is my guess, but
So it's
I
not
can't,
something we
I
care
can't say
about?
for sure tonight.
Okay, so it's not something we care about if it includes a basement or not. That's fine. Just that it expands the size of your home office. We weren't asked to look at that, I guess.
Right.
And it becomes a larger question. And I say this because there's a debate, I think, in a lot of codes about whether or not basement space is considered living area or not.
Right.
It really depends on the goal of who's doing the defining. Because if you call it living space, then there's fire codes that get involved and everything else. So I think traditionally it's always been kind of where this goes, which is the above-ground floors. But
And then there's finished basements and unfinished basements and partially finished basements.
bingo, and that's why it gets you know, what does that attic space that isn't really considered habitable because it doesn't have enough head height count as? When I go to sell my house, I'm going to include it. When I go to do my taxes, I'm going to not include it. I'm not trying to be flippant, but it becomes very situational.
Should we at least use the term gross floor?
Right, so I
area
was gonna
rather
say,
than total?
if it would make you more comfortable to use gross floor area here, because that's a defined term, we could.
Yeah, I suppose, if you think, as our attorney, that that would be an improvement.
I like that change simply because we say total floor area, but then not have a definition for total, but we have one for gross. It makes
Yep.
things more confusing than they need to be.
Yeah,
I think there's a number of definitions in our code that are not used anywhere in the code at this point in time. Maybe they're very old. The terms never appear in the code, and then there are certain terms in the code that are not defined at all. So,
Can we ask
Take that out.
for that to be done as a cleanup text amendment?
sure, I think that would be a good idea.
for our next consideration.
Yeah. I mean, maybe
Would
not,
you agree?
maybe not next month, but
Right.
something to put on staff's agenda.
To look for defined terms that aren't used anywhere but the definitions?
Yeah.
Or to make sure that, yeah, if a term is used, and there's a definition that's kind of like it,
We should
that's
use,
defined, that we should use it, or we should make it clear that this is not what we're referring to, that the defined term is not what we're referring to.
and if any of us have a working list of those items, we can provide
I
them.
know someone who might have some.
So if the amendment is revised to say the home occupation shall not exceed 25% of the total gross floor area of the principal building and/or 50% of the gross floor area of an accessory building. Is that what you guys are getting at?
That's good.
That's the intention, but could we just make it clear by having it as two separate sentences? Home occupations within a principal
Yeah, sure.
building, 25%, and within accessory building, 50%?
50%.
That sounds good.
Thank you.
Okay. So we have discussed all of the proposed text amendments.
Were we going to add another paragraph or sentence, however we define these things? 10.7-3, 6, are we going to make an explicit pool house item that allows the shower as well? Or not?
I would like to.
Yeah, I think we should.
I think we should, but
Can we add a definition of pool house to, don't we have a definition section? Would that be adequate to place it there?
I think we
Does
have
it
to.
make
Once you say pool house
Yeah.
and you allow that half bath plus shower, then
Right.
you have to define what a pool house is. Otherwise, we get too creative. And by we, I mean people who want a lot.
So do we need to come up with a proposed definition of pool house?
Or at least some
That is-
parameters we could use to write one.
Okay.
So, you were concerned about ponds, for instance, so what constitutes a pool in the mind of the members?
I'm going to ask a kind of rhetorical question, but are pools defined in our code somewhere?
Because they're not
No, I
allowed
don't
in
think so.
certain,
I don't think they are. There's in 10.7.3, there's a reference to swimming pools, but it's not defined in the definitions.
Well, it says has to comply with Title 4, Chapter 7.
And I think that has something to do with fencing, but I'm not positive.
Right, so there's a section, usually a section in the village code in the building provisions on swimming pools. So do we have a written code handy back there?
And I'm assuming,
I can grab one.
Attorney Mars, that there is something that defines a swimming pool, because a swimming pool has safety and other code issues that come with it. So it has to be defined, I think. It would have to be defined.
So I do remember one instance where there was a disagreement between a resident and a staff as to whether something was a pond or a pool, right? And so there are ways to get at that.
And that's why I'm thinking that it's in there, but I'm speaking without having read through the whole thing recently, so.
And I think we want to be careful because, right, a pool could be kind of one of those inflatable pools as a non-permanent
Well,
pool.
I think a
So we
pool
don't want
house should
people
be,
calling their pool, right, their
Yeah.
garage the
Yeah.
pool house because
so
they
yeah,
have
you're right. I think in the definition of pool house, it should reference a permanent
permanent.
construction. I assume
Right.
even in above-ground pools are somehow anchored. I don't know how you do that.
Right.
They're actually just set on the
Legit
ground.
in-ground or above-ground pool.
An above-ground pool is simply a
Yeah.
giant container of water that's sitting on the ground. I mean,
But it's
that's,
not inflatable, so maybe like rigid, I don't know. Then we get lots of different
Right.
concerns.
right, so when we talk about pools versus ponds though, so, you know, the fact that you have a pool, if someone's arguing, well, this is my pool house because this is my pool and it's a pond, well, that triggers all these, you know, fencing requirements and other things that they're not gonna wanna do to their pond, right? So I don't know how much of a danger that is.
and maybe that is the protection to the village, is that when you do try and get creative with what you're calling this puddle of water, that, well, fine, if you want to call that inflatable pool, then guess what? You have to put in the fence, and now we have to inspect it for all these other things. You know, you want to go down that road and try and play fast and loose with the rules, but I also don't want to put staff in a position where they have to play, you know, more legalistic with things.
So far, we've established a pool is gonna be permanent in the sense that it's there 365 days a year. It's not something you blow up and take down, right?
Right.
And it's
Okay, that's
used
good.
for swimming by people.
Something against dog pools?
No, but I don't want someone claiming that their dog pool then justifies their pool house.
Yes, that's true, but I
And
think
that's really where I think we're trying to go with this whole thing. is
permanent year-round structure is
The
good.
pool house is justified by the pool, it's not the opposite.
So are we trying to define swimming pool too? Because I'm concerned that gets a little beyond what our
That's why
published for, so.
I'm kind of leery about this one. I'm
Well,
just
maybe if
hoping
there's a
that,
definition of swimming pool, we can just reference a pool house as something that is a detached structure
an attached
adjacent to
structure.
a swimming pool as defined.
Can I ask Ashley?
Yes.
Does the village follow the International Residential Code for building purposes?
We use the, sorry, I know we use the 2006 International Building Code, so that would cover the residential properties. We do have a section within, within the code that specifically addresses swimming pools and how they are constructed, what the permitting and zoning is. They specifically, note that pools should be permitted, so that in itself would create a level of review and oversight for whatever would be considered a swimming pool within the village. And so that might be a mechanism that we might use. It would pertain to a permitted swimming pool that would also allow further consideration of what would be considered a pool house.
Then can we go with, I think this is where you're going, but tell me where I'm wrong. Pool house is an accessory structure that is in conjunction with a swimming pool that is constructed under section whatever.
Yes.
That should be enough in my mind. That pairs the two pretty undeniably.
Yes, I think if we've issued a building permit for a pool, it should be enough to have an accessory pool house to that pool. And that spares us from having to try to come up with a definition.
Right.
Yes, I'd rather not have us come up with that definition.
Preferable.
Okay.
So then going back to Joel's point, is we have to add somewhere that a shower is allowed.
Yes, and that was,
Just in-
where I was going with this, that in, sorry,
In that plumbing
10-7-3-6, probably it becomes paragraph G, and then G becomes H, that full bathrooms and related plumbing are allowed in a pool house constructed in
Right.
conjunction with pools defined in section, yeah.
Or just a pool house, and then pool house definition is in definitions.
That's fine. That's probably better. And then F needs to be adjusted to say allowed in accessory structures with the exception of pool houses. Because that's the only place that that's allowed.
Can I use the term full bathrooms then? Which may have a full bathroom, or just shower,
Showers and
which
tubs.
may have a shower.
Showers even.
Yeah, shower, yes.
Yeah, then that's consistent with the fact that we said toilets and sinks, and now we're
Right.
saying shower, so
Yeah.
we're talking about the fixtures.
For clarification, did you say not to allow a tub? Or is a tub indicative
I
of,
think we're not even
of the
going to
intent?
mention tubs.
Yeah.
Okay,
we're just saying
so
shower.
just a shower, okay. Because when it comes to interpretation of whatever is proposed, if it's meeting that intent, then we'll most likely see showers, but I just wanted to check. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so F is now gonna say toilets and sinks and related plumbing are allowed in accessory structures, with the exception of pool houses, which may have a shower in addition.
Yes.
And then you talked about a new section,
No, I think with what you just said, we don't need a new section.
but then we will have a definition of pool house added to the definition section, which will refer to it as an accessory structure to a pool as permitted and regulated in such and such section of the
Yeah.
village code.
Yes.
Okay?
So, from this point, I'm not sure that we're ready for a motion to recommend approval. Do we need to have a revised text?
I
or-
don't think so. I
no?
think as long as
Okay.
everyone understands what the edits will be,
Okay.
that's fine. I think we still have the home office terms hanging out there, right? In the very first sentence.
No, I think,
What did we decide on that?
I think we decided to strike it from that, to remove that.
I'll defer to John on this, is having the home occupation in 10-6-2 sufficient to address the home office issue?
I prefer to leave home office in there, but if I'm outnumbered, I'm outnumbered. I don't think it's not a hill I'm planning on dying on, so for whatever that's worth.
We like you, Rob.
So, yeah, we can strike it. I mean, if we don't even need to worry about voting. I mean, I think it's clear that that would, including but not limited to, covers a multitude of things.
Okay.
Do you
So
want me to
then, do
run
we-
through the changes one last time?
Sure.
Maybe,
And
yeah,
then someone can just say a motion to
to
approve.
that, yeah.
I like that idea.
Yes, I think that would
Leaving you with the most of the work.
So in 10.7.3A, it's including but not limited to, then the list, with pool house, home office is stricken. Down in 6E, I think there was a majority who were okay with that as written. Flipping on to the next page, F, toilets and sinks and related plumbing are allowed in accessory structures with the exception of pool houses, which may have a shower in addition. G was okay as written. And then going on to the use standards, we have for home occupations, home occupation shall not exceed 25% of the total gross floor area of the principal building, period. Home occupation shall not exceed 50% of the gross floor area of an accessory structure, period. And then we will add a pool house definition, as I stated earlier, defining it as a accessory structure and referencing our permitting and regulations within the village code.
Can you repeat the one about the accessory structures and primary structures and
Yes.
percentages?
The home occupation shall not exceed 25% of the total gross floor area of the principal building.
Do we need to say home occupation in the primary structure shall not exceed 25% of
Well, the principal building is the residence.
Right.
So,
the principal building? But, so read it again. All it says is that the home occupation shall not occupy more than? okay.
25% of the
Okay.
total gross floor area of the principal building, meaning the residence.
Okay, okay.
And a second sentence, a home occupation shall not exceed 50% of the gross floor area of an accessory structure.
So is the first one occupy or exceed? It's the-
Exceed.
Okay. So I guess what I'm saying is, reading that, you could have a home office in the accessory structure that does not exceed 25% of the primary. Because we're not saying a home occupation within, that is within the primary structure can only be 25% of that primary structure. A home office within an accessory structure cannot exceed 50% of the gross floor area of that structure.
I like that clarification.
I feel like that clarification is
I'm
necessary.
not sure I follow.
If the first sentence read, the home occupation may not exceed 25% of the primary residence, if that home occupation is actually in the accessory structure, we're saying it can be as large as 25% of the primary structure's gross floor area. Because
Okay.
we're not saying where it is.
So what if we took principal building and moved it up in the sentence? I think that's what you were saying earlier. The home occupation, if located in a principal building, shall not exceed 25% of the total gross floor area.
Right,
Okay?
yes.
And then I
Does
can
that
use
make
the
sense?
same sentence structure in the, you okay with that?
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I think principal building is used often in the code, and so I need to try to switch to,
No, I was not proposing
Okay.
that at all. I just wanted to make sure that it's the home occupation within the primary structure can be 25% of the primary structure.
okay. The home occupation when located in the
Yeah.
principal building. Okay,
Yes.
okay.
Okay. So with that clarification, do I have a motion?
So moved. to accept the edits by Attorney Mars.
I'll second.
Okay.
Last year.
Oh, do we want to go over the
So
standards?
do we want to go over the standards?
Yes, we do.
That we do. Okay, sorry. So let's go over the standards. The extent to which the proposed amendment promotes public health, safety, comfort, convenience, and general welfare of the village.
Yes,
Yes.
we are
we're trying-
maintaining the residential character of the village.
And just a reminder that with text amendments, you don't have to meet all the standards. They are just more of your guiding principles.
Right. And I would say that we are providing additional comfort and convenience for the welfare of the village and the residents.
Yes.
The relative gain to the public as compared to the hardship imposed upon the applicant. But I don't think there is a hardship on the applicant.
No.
Yeah.
The consistency of the proposed amendment with village plans.
Goes back to what and this goes to C and D. We're still maintaining the residential character of the village, which is the goal of the zoning code.
Okay,
In the appropriately designated areas.
so D as well.
Yes.
It's consistent. Whether a proposed amendment corrects an error or omission. It doesn't. Perhaps an omission. The proposed amendment will benefit the residents of the village as a whole and not just the applicant, I think.
Yeah, I think that's,
By allowing them. The proposed amendment provides a more workable way to achieve the intent and purpose of the zoning ordinance and village plans.
yes, it clarifies certain things that we're missing.
And makes staff enforcement of ordinances cleaner.
And the proposed amendment is consistent with overall structure and organization of the zoning ordinance.
That I'm deferring to Attorney Mars.
Commissioner Pelletier, I'm sorry, the notes that I gave you, there's one additional standard that was tucked in with G. It's letter H.
The
The extent to which the proposed amendment creates nonconformities.
Correct.
I see.
Sorry about that.
And since we are expanding uses, I don't think it can
Agreed.
create a nonconformity. Okay. I think we're ready to call the roll.
Okay, ready? Commissioner Hennigan,
Yes.
Commissioner Marhol,
Yes.
Commissioner Matthews,
Yes,
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Pelletier.
Yes.
Thank you. All right.
Then there's more, isn't there? So, old business, we have no old business or new business. I think we're ready for a move to adjourn, a motion to adjourn. Do I hear?
So moved.
second.
Okay.
We
Okay,
don't need a roll call.
don't need a roll call. You're
Okay.
set.
We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.